When panic starts rising in the world, most people start shrinking. They pull back, they freeze, they worry about everything that could go wrong. But when panic starts, that's the exact moment you need to rise. Panic is evidence that pressure is building, and pressure is the doorway to purpose. What breaks others can build you. If you respond the right way, the panic has started, yes, but that does not mean you need to panic. It means something in your life is shaking so that something stronger can stand. Every season of fear is also a season of revelation. When people panic, they lose focus. When you stay grounded, you gain clarity. Panic exposes what you've been depending on and forces you to discover what you should have depended on all along. The panic has started, but that panic is not your enemy. It's your indicator. It's telling you that a shift is happening. The ground beneath you may feel unstable, the future may look uncertain, and voices around you may grow loud with fear. But your strength is not built in comfort, it's built in conflict. It's built when you decide to stand still while everything else shakes. You may not control the storm, but you can control your stance. You can control your choices. You can control which voices you allow into your mind. Panic creates noise, but purpose speaks quietly. If you only listen to the noise, you'll miss the direction that was meant for you. When the world panics, discipline becomes your weapon. Focus becomes your shield. Faith becomes your anchor. The panic has started, but so has your opportunity. Opportunity to grow. Opportunity to transform. Opportunity to break cycles that fear has held you in for years. Sometimes the panic around you is the push you needed to step into a new level. Sometimes the pressure is the permission you were waiting for. Sometimes the crisis is the clarity you refuse to give yourself. Don't run from the panic. Don't surrender to the fear. Stand in it, face it, rise above it, because panic wants to convince you that life is ending. But what if life is just beginning? What if the shaking is preparing you for something stronger? What if everything you're scared of is actually everything you're ready for? The panic has started, but so has your breakthrough, so has your strength, so has your transformation. This is not the moment to crumble. It's the moment to rise. What others see as chaos, you will see as calling. What they see as fear, you will see as foundation. What they see as the end, you will treat as the beginning. The panic has started, but you are stronger than the storm, greater than the fear, and built for this very moment. Panic is often misunderstood as a signal that everything is falling apart, but in reality, it is often the very pressure that prepares you for the next level of your life. When you first feel panic rising, your natural reaction is to assume something is wrong. But what if something is actually being made right? What if panic is simply the body and mind reacting to a shift you've needed for a long time? Pressure doesn't show up to destroy you, it shows up to develop you. Think about how diamonds are formed. Think about how muscles grow. Think about how courage is built. None of these come from comfort. They are produced in the presence of pressure. So when panic rises, it might be the first signal that purpose is pushing through barriers that once kept you stagnant. In life, most breakthroughs begin as breakdowns. You feel overwhelmed, anxious, uncertain, and your mind starts racing through all the what ifs. But panic is not the enemy of progress. Passivity is. Panic is that inner alarm telling you something needs your attention, your correction, your redirection. It's a sign that you've hit a place where you can no longer stay the same. It's uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. Panic shows up the moment you are crossing a threshold. The pressure you feel is a spiritual and emotional stretching that forces you to expand beyond who you were yesterday. People often misinterpret panic as a signal to retreat, step back, or shrink. But the truth is, panic is often the clearest indication that you are on the edge of transformation. When the heat is turned up, it's not because you're being punished. It's because something inside you is being purified. When panic strikes, you have two choices: crumble under the weight of it, or let the pressure push you forward. Panic reveals what you can handle. It exposes the strength you didn't know you had. It wakes you up to the fact that you've been living beneath your potential, and now something inside you refuses to let you stay where you've been. If everything stayed calm in your life, you would never grow. If everything stayed easy, you would never stretch. If everything stayed predictable, you would never discover what you're capable of. Panic breaks routine. It interrupts comfort. It shatters the illusion that you are in control of everything. That breaking point becomes the moment where you finally release your fear of change. Pressure teaches you to depend on discipline instead of emotions. It teaches you to act even when your feelings try to freeze you. Panic becomes the trainer that pushes you further than you would ever push yourself. You may not like the sensation of panic, but you must respect what it unlocks. It forces you to confront the habits, beliefs, and limitations you've been avoiding. It shakes loose the excuses that kept you from stepping forward. It brings to the surface the self-doubt, the insecurity, the fear that you buried for years, not to expose your weakness, but to reveal your strength. Panic does not show up at random. It shows up when purpose is pressing through barriers that cannot hold you anymore. This is why panic is not the end. It's the beginning, not the collapse, but the construction. Pressure is what turns your potential into power. Panic is what signals the transition into a new version of yourself. Instead of seeing panic as a sign to stop, you begin to see it as the signal that you're getting close to breakthrough, close to a shift, close to the moment where your life moves from surviving to rising. Panic is the evidence that purpose is knocking and pressure is simply pushing you to open the door. Panic exposes shaky foundations in a way calm seasons never could. When everything is quiet, controlled, and predictable, you can easily convince yourself that you're strong, stable, and secure. But the moment panic hits, the truth rises to the surface. Panic has a way of shining a bright light on what you've really been depending on. Maybe you thought your confidence was solid, but panic reveals it was built on approval from others. Maybe you believed your peace was steady, but panic shows that it was tied to circumstances instead of internal strength. Maybe you thought your direction was clear, but panic reveals you were more guided by convenience than conviction. Panic doesn't come to embarrass you. It comes to expose what needs rebuilding. When panic hits, shaky foundations crack first. This is why people often feel like their world is falling apart during stressful moments. But what's actually happening is that whatever was weak, unstable, or temporary can no longer hold the weight of the season you're entering. You can't build a higher life on a low foundation. You can't embrace new purpose with old structures. Panic is the pressure that tests the strength of what you're standing on. It shows you what cannot go with you into your next chapter. That relationship that collapses under pressure was not strong enough for your destiny. That habit that falls apart when stress hits was not meant to carry you. That mindset that crumbles when life shakes you was never going to sustain your future. Panic forces you to ask hard questions you might otherwise avoid. What have you been trusting? Where have you placed your identity? What voices have you been listening to? What beliefs have been guiding your decisions? When panic comes, it's easy to think the problem is external, a situation falling apart, a challenge rising, a circumstance shifting. But often the real issue is internal. Panic reveals the cracks in your confidence, the fears behind your silence, the insecurities hiding behind your ambition. It exposes the motives you didn't want to admit. It reveals the expectations you placed on people who could never carry the weight of your dreams. Panic shows you exactly what needs strengthening. But panic does more than expose weakness. It points you toward what you should depend on instead. When your false foundations shake, you start searching for a foundation that doesn't move. When the things you relied on collapse, you discover what truly holds you together. Panic redirects your dependency from unstable sources to unshakable strength. It teaches you that you cannot put your peace in people because people change. You cannot put your identity in achievements because achievements fade. You cannot put your security in circumstances because circumstances shift. Panic reminds you that anything you build your life on must be stronger than the storms you face. In this sense, panic becomes a teacher. It teaches you the value of grounding yourself in purpose instead of panic, discipline instead of emotion, faith instead of fear. It teaches you to separate what is temporary from what is essential. It pushes you to rebuild with intention instead of convenience. You begin to understand that the things that fall apart were never meant to stay, and the things that remain are the things worth standing on. Panic doesn't just expose the cracks, it invites you to strengthen what matters. It invites you to build deeper, to live wiser, to lead yourself with greater clarity. It shows you what needs healing, what needs releasing, and what needs reinforcing. Panic may shake you, but it also shapes you. It takes away what cannot carry you so you can finally stand on what will. You cannot always control the chaos around you, but you can always control your response to it. This is one of the most powerful truths you can ever learn when panic begins to rise. Life will bring storms you didn't expect, challenges you didn't choose, and pressure you didn't ask for. But even in the middle of it all, you still have authority over your own mindset, your reactions, your attitude, and your decisions. Chaos may be loud, but your choices speak louder. Panic tries to convince you that you're powerless. But the moment you decide how you will respond, you take your power back. You begin to recognize that while you can't dictate what enters your life, you can absolutely dictate how you move through it. Your response determines your reality. Two people can face the same crisis with completely different outcomes because of their mindset. One person allows panic to choke their clarity, while the other allows pressure to sharpen it. One person collapses under fear, while the other becomes more focused because of it. What separates them isn't the size of the storm, but the strength of their stance. When you understand that your choices matter even in chaos, you refuse to let panic define your identity. You start choosing discipline over emotion, purpose over panic, and direction over distraction. This is why controlling your stance is so important. When panic erupts, your body may shake, your mind may race, and your emotions may surge, but you can still choose to stand firm. You can breathe before reacting. You can pause before deciding. You can think before speaking. These small choices create stability in unstable moments. Chaos wants you to move impulsively, to react without thinking, to follow fear instead of wisdom. But when you ground yourself, even for a moment, you regain your balance. You reclaim your voice. You remember that panic is a feeling, not a command. Another part of controlling your response is protecting what you allow into your mind. Panic often grows louder because of the voices you entertain. Fearful people spread fearful thoughts. Negative environments poison positive intentions. People who don't understand your journey will give you advice that doesn't suit your destiny. In moments of chaos, who you listen to becomes as important as what you do. Protecting your mental space is not selfish, it's survival. You have to choose which voices shape your direction, which words feed your spirit, and which influences deserve access to your thoughts. The truth is, panic creates noise, but purpose speaks quietly. If you only listen to the noise, you'll miss the whisper of direction trying to guide you. Chaos tries to overwhelm your senses so you forget your strength, forget your vision, forget your identity. But your calm decisions in chaotic moments become the compass that leads you forward. Even when you feel lost, one steady choice at a time pulls you back into alignment. This is how you rise above the storm, not by eliminating chaos, but by refusing to let chaos eliminate your clarity. Controlling your response also means choosing what you focus on. Panic magnifies problems, but discipline magnifies possibilities. You can choose to dwell on what's collapsing, or you can choose to focus on what's being built. You can feed fear, or you can feed faith. You can fixate on what you can't change, or you can take action on what you can. Every moment you choose focus over fear, you weaken panic's power. Every moment you choose courage over confusion, you strengthen your ability to move forward. And even when you feel overwhelmed, remember this, your response is your anchor. Chaos doesn't get to decide your future. Fear doesn't get to write your story. Panic doesn't get to define your limits. You hold the power to stand steady, choose wisely, act intentionally, and move forward with clarity. You may not control the storm, but you control your stance, and that changes everything. Crisis has a unique way of revealing what you couldn't or wouldn't see in seasons of comfort. When life is calm, you rarely question your patterns, your habits, or your direction. You move through days on autopilot, assuming that what worked yesterday will work tomorrow. But when panic begins to rise and the ground beneath you starts shifting, suddenly the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Crisis brings clarity because it strips away the distractions, the illusions, and the excuses you've been hiding behind. It forces you to confront what you've avoided, what you've postponed, and what you've denied. In moments of panic, you don't just see the world differently, you see yourself differently. There are times when comfort blinds you more than chaos ever could. Comfort lets you tolerate things you should have changed. It lets you stay in environments that limit you. It lets you keep habits that drain you. It lets you hold on to relationships that weaken you. But when crisis hits, everything you ignored becomes urgent. Suddenly, you recognize the cracks you dismissed. You see the patterns you pretended weren't there. You feel the weight of the choices you postponed. Crisis pulls back the curtain and shows you what is real, what is broken, and what is ready for transformation. It is uncomfortable, but it is honest. And honesty is often the first step toward change. Many times, crisis is the push you needed but never wanted. There are seasons when you know deep inside that you're supposed to grow, shift, or elevate, but fear keeps you stuck. You cling to the familiar because it feels safe, even when it's slowly suffocating your potential. Crisis removes the option of staying the same. It shakes the foundation so forcefully that you can no longer pretend everything is fine. It pushes you out of spaces that can no longer hold your future. It forces you to make decisions that comfort would have allowed you to delay for years. In that way, crisis becomes the catalyst for the transformation you kept resisting. Crisis also has a way of revealing your values. When everything is falling apart, you quickly learn what truly matters and what never mattered at all. You start separating the essential from the unnecessary. Your priorities shift, your perspective deepens, and your motives become purified. You stop chasing things that don't align with who you are becoming. You stop pouring energy into people who drain your spirit. You stop living for approval and start living with intention. Sometimes it takes a crisis to remind you of what you were always meant to focus on. Crisis brings a clarity that comfort never will. Another truth about crisis is that it exposes the strength you didn't know you possessed. You discover abilities you never used, courage you never activated, resilience you never realized was in you. When systems collapse, you learn to build. When support fails, you learn to stand. When the path vanishes, you learn to create a new one. Panic may make you feel weak, but the journey through panic reveals how strong you truly are. Crisis doesn't create your strength, it uncovers it. As painful as crisis can be, it also strips away the things that were holding you back. The people who disappeared during chaos were never meant to stay. The plans that fall apart were never going to work long term. The opportunities that close were not aligned with your destiny. Crisis clears the path by removing what shouldn't continue with you. At first, it feels like loss. But in time, you realize it was actually alignment. And in that alignment, transformation begins. Crisis shakes you awake. It forces you to evolve. It pushes you toward growth you would have avoided. It gives you clarity you didn't have, strength you didn't see, and direction you desperately needed. You come out of crisis not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to become. Panic may seem like the alarm of the world, but for those who understand its purpose, it is actually the announcement of a breakthrough. When fear rises and chaos surrounds you, most people see only danger and retreat. They allow the anxiety of the moment to define their reality, assuming that the noise around them signals the end of possibilities. But breakthrough often arrives disguised as crisis. The louder the panic, the closer you may be to a shift that changes everything. The world's alarm is not always a warning to stop. It can be a signal that something new is ready to emerge. If you choose to see it this way, panic becomes not a threat, but an invitation. Breakthrough begins the moment you recognize that panic is not controlling you. Your response is. When the people around you are running scared, you have the opportunity to remain grounded. When voices of doubt and fear grow louder, you have the chance to listen to the quiet whisper of clarity inside you. Panic exposes the cracks, but it also illuminates the path. It shows you what must change, what must be strengthened, and what must be released. Those who panic too soon miss the message. Those who remain aware see the opportunity hidden within the chaos. Every challenge carries within it the seed of a new beginning. This is why perspective matters so much during moments of fear. The world may scream that everything is falling apart, but that is a limited view. From a higher perspective, panic signals a reset, a shift, and a chance to rise above the ordinary. When the pressures of life press in, they are not only testing you, but also preparing you. Pressure purifies intentions, refines your skills, and awakens potential you did not know you had. What seems like panic is often the prelude to progress, a necessary shaking that allows a stronger foundation to be built. The journey from panic to breakthrough requires intentional focus. You cannot wait for the storm to pass before acting. You must act within it. Panic is a call to engage, not to retreat. When you embrace it with wisdom, it teaches you resilience. When you navigate it with faith, it trains your mind to discern opportunity amid fear. When you respond with clarity instead of confusion, you unlock solutions that were invisible in moments of calm. Panic reveals that what was holding you back is not the world, but the hesitation within you. Breakthrough comes when you realize that your next step forward must be taken despite the fear, not because the fear has disappeared. Breakthrough also comes from using the panic as a teacher rather than an enemy. Panic highlights patterns that are not serving you, relationships that drain you, habits that limit you, and distractions that cloud your judgment. It shines a light on areas where growth is overdue. If you respond with learning instead of despair, panic can accelerate your progress. The very moments that feel like collapse are often the moments where momentum is born. You begin to see that the shaking around you is actually rearranging your life to create space for something greater. Finally, understanding that panic is the announcement of breakthrough empowers you to rise above fear. It allows you to see that what others perceive as chaos can become your opportunity. It reminds you that life does not stop because the world trembles. It continues, and those who are ready will move with it. Panic, when approached with awareness, transforms into purpose. The noise becomes a signal, the pressure becomes preparation, and the fear becomes fuel. What once threatened to overwhelm you now propels you forward, guiding you into a season of growth, strength, and achievement that you might never have reached otherwise. This is why panic should never be feared completely. It is not the end, but the threshold of what is next. The louder the alarm, the closer the breakthrough. The more urgent the chaos, the more critical the opportunity. The moment panic rises is the moment to rise as well, knowing that on the other side of fear is the promise of transformation, the birth of potential, and the announcement of everything you were created to accomplish. Thank you.